Chapter 1. Blood Tomb. Yesterday, I went to my boyfriend's house to meet his parents. His house was very small, only 2 rooms. In the evening, after his mother had arranged the blankets and mattresses, she asked if I could sleep with Wang Wen. Wang Wen is my boyfriend's name. I hesitated for a moment and then agreed. After all, his house only has 2 rooms. If I didn't sleep with Wang Wen, I would have to sleep with his mother. Compared to that, sleeping with Wang Wen would be a little more comfortable. This was the first time I had slept with Wang Wen, and also the first time we had physical contact that went beyond holding hands and hugging. In the evening, we were both very excited. He told me to close my eyes, and his cool lips gently kissed mine. Normally, Wang Wen seems very shy, but his kissing technique is so superb that my whole body was soon burning up. Obviously, he was very eager too. His breathing became more and more rapid, and simple caresses could no longer satisfy his cold hands. He reached under my clothes and searched downwards. Just as he touched that boundary, I woke up as if from a dream, grabbed his fighting hand with one of mine, and said, "No, I'm on my period." He said, "Oh," seemingly disbelieving. Not only did he not stop, but he kissed even more passionately. I was really about to collapse from his skillful kissing, but I really was on my period. I had to push him away while I still had some sanity left. "I really am on my period. If you don't believe me, try it. You can feel the sanitary pad through the clothes." After speaking, I looked at him apologetically. It's really painful to be interrupted halfway like this, especially by menstruation. It's such a buzzkill. But Wang Wen wasn't angry at all. His eyes even shone with a mischievous gleam as he whispered into my ear, "Baby, haven't you ever heard that girls enjoy it even more during their period? The nerves are more sensitive, and the excitement is stronger. Do you want to try it?" With that, he wrapped his arm around my waist. His cunning smile blended with his simple, honest face. Under the moonlight, he looked unusually handsome, as if he had transformed into a different person. I stared blankly in unconsciousness. We've known each other for over a year. In my heart, Wang Wen has always been the gentle, honest type. I even complained once that he didn't know anything about romance or sentimentality. Who would have thought that he would be so passionate tonight? Moreover, this mischievousness is quite dashing. How didn't I notice it before? He acted very quickly, slipping underneath while I was still dazed. His skillful fingers constantly stimulated me, causing the blood in my body to boil. Even though I knew it wasn't good to cross the line during my period, I couldn't bear to push him away anymore. To tell the truth, doing it during my period is really comfortable. Although this was my first time, it was a little painful at first, but Wang Wen's technique was very good. He started gently, waited for me to gradually adapt, and then attacked fiercely, quickly making me feel so happy that I wanted to fly. Wang Wen was very enthusiastic. We wrestled all night, and he had no intention of stopping, not even taking a break. Only when I was too tired from exhausting all my strength and begged him to continue next time did he release me with regret. Chapter 2. The Exploding Grave. I slept soundly until morning, and when I opened my eyes, it was already midday. Wang Wen was gone. Not only him, but his parents were nowhere to be seen either. I was the only one left in the house, and when I called Wang Wen, no one answered. What was going on? It was my fault for sleeping until midday on my first visit to his house, but that didn't mean his whole family could just abandon me here, right? At least I'm a guest, and besides, the reason I slept so late was because of their son. I felt annoyed and hungry. I washed my face and decided to go out and buy some food. Unexpectedly, as soon as I pushed open the door, I saw a little boy sitting in the yard. It was Yao Rongzi, Wang Wen's nephew, whom I had met yesterday. The little boy ran up quickly, grabbed my hand, and pulled me outside, talking about how the oldest grave in the village had suddenly exploded last night, and there was a large blood stain on it. Now all the villagers were at the cemetery, and his aunt had told him to take me there. The boy's aunt was Wang Wen's mother. It felt strange. A grave exploding in their village, and they're taking me there. It's not like any future daughter-in-law, on her first visit, gets dragged to the graveyard 2 days in a row. That's right, I had been to the graveyard 2 days in a row. Yesterday, after arriving at Wang Wen's house, I had dinner with his parents. During the meal, his mother gave me a red envelope, saying it was a gift for our first meeting. In Wang Wen's hometown, there's a custom where if the mother-in-law is satisfied with her future daughter-in-law, she'll give a meeting gift, indicating that the marriage is certain. So, after the meal, his parents took Wang Wen and me to visit his grandparents' graves, saying it was so they could meet their granddaughter-in-law. It was my first time visiting a grave. The villagers were all buried in that area, so the scene in the cemetery was frightening enough. All I could see were rows of graves. At first, it seemed fine, but the farther in I went, the colder it became. My whole body was freezing. I didn't know if it was psychological or if the yin energy in the cemetery was really too heavy. So, now they wanted me to go again. Deep down, I didn't want to at all, but Wang Wen's mother was my future mother-in-law after all, and Wang Wen and I had been intimate last night, so it wouldn't be good to refuse. So, I had no choice but to follow Yao Rongzi to the cemetery. When we arrived, the cemetery was already packed with people. It seemed that everyone in the village, young and old, male and female, had come. Under Yao Rongzi's guidance, I found Wang Wen and his parents. Wang Wen's parents were frowning, looking at me with serious expressions. Wang Wen, on the other hand, looked very relaxed. He had been fighting all night yesterday, but he didn't seem tired at all. He smiled brightly when he saw me. Wang Wen's parents' gazes left me bewildered. I was about to ask Wang Wen what was going on when his mother asked me bluntly, "What did you do yesterday? Are you on your period?" Chapter 3. Bloodstains on the bedsheet. Good heavens, why would she ask her future daughter-in-law such a question, and in front of so many strange men, no less? My face flushed crimson, and I stammered, glancing at Wang Wen. Seeing that I didn't answer, Wang Wen's mother grew even more anxious, raising her voice to ask if I was having my period and what exactly I had been doing and where I had gone last night. I just wanted to find a hole to crawl into. Finally, Wang Wen came to my rescue. "Mom, she was with me all last night. What could she possibly have done?" Wang Wen's mother sighed in relief upon hearing this, but she still wasn't entirely at ease. "Are you sure she was with you all night? Is she having her period or not?" "No," Wang Wen said firmly and decisively. I looked at Wang Wen in surprise, not understanding why he was lying, nor did I understand what his mother was playing at. Luckily, once his mother knew that I wasn't having my period, she calmed down and told me to stand closer to Wang Wen. I suppressed my anger and walked straight to Wang Wen, asking quietly, "What on earth is going on? Why is your mother treating me like this?" Wang Wen still had a smile on his face, looking at me meaningfully. "You'll find out soon enough." As soon as he finished speaking, the villagers started clamoring, saying, "Widow Wang is here." Widow Wang was about 40 years old, tall and sturdy, and seemed to be very well known in the village. She quickly approached. Her sharp eyes glanced at me, and then she turned to ask Wang Wen's mother, "Have you found the ones who are menstruating?" Wang Wen's mother said that she had, and pointed behind her. Only then did I notice that there was a pit behind her, and in the pit were 5 terrified girls, with a large blood stain on the edge of the pit. It seemed that this pit was the exploded grave that Yao Rongzi had mentioned. Widow Wang glanced at the girls, then jumped straight into the pit. With a swoosh, she pulled out a large knife and looked at the 5 girls. "Speak up, who slept with a man last night? Confess yourselves." The 5 girls were so scared that their faces turned pale, and no one dared to speak. Not only them, but even I looked at Wang Wen in alarm. Wang Wen shook his head at me, signaling me not to speak and to just watch silently. Widow Wang waited for a while, but no one confessed. She lost her patience and said angrily, "This blood tomb has exploded. so don't have any more hope. See this blood? Whoever is menstruating shows that they have been entangled by unclean things. If you don't sever that connection, you will definitely die within 3 months. With that, Widow Wang glared at the 5 girls, finally lingering on my face. Her gaze made me shudder, and I suddenly remembered something very important. Wang Wen and I had crossed the line last night, and there should have been quite a few bloodstains on the bedsheet, but when I woke up and straightened the blankets, it seemed like there were no bloodstains at all. Thinking of this, goosebumps covered my entire body. If there were no bloodstains on the bedsheet, could the bloodstain on this tomb be mine? But I was clearly at Wang Wen's house last night, and the person who made love to me was definitely Wang Wen. I've known him for so long, I can't be mistaken. Chapter 4. The Strange Boyfriend. I was completely stunned. Luckily, the Widow Wang only glanced at me before turning away. She didn't bother to ask who had slept with a ghost. Instead, she directly cut the palms of the 5 girls, smeared their blood on their hair, cut the hair off, and burned it. The process was very fast and looked quite bloody. After the clumps of hair had turned to ash, the Widow Wang breathed a sigh of relief, told the villagers to fill the grave again, and then turned and left. I also breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed everything was resolved. But I still had doubts in my mind. Whose blood was on that grave? Was there really blood on Wang Wen's bedsheets? With my heart in turmoil, I had no desire to stay in the cemetery any longer. I dragged Wang Wen back to his house. As soon as we got home, I went straight to the bedroom. When I lifted the blanket, my whole body froze. There was no blood. The bedsheet was the same one I slept on last night, but it was very clean. There wasn't a single blood stain, not even a trace of lovemaking. That couldn't be. If I really had sex with Wang Wen on this bed last night, there would definitely be traces. Could the blood on the grave be mine? The person I had sex with last night wasn't Wang Wen, but something unclean. My scalp went numb, and while I was still in a panic, Wang Wen's voice came from behind me. You look pale. Are you looking for this? In Wang Wen's hand was a bedsheet identical to the one on the bed. It looked extremely wrinkled, with a dark red blood stain in the center. Seeing the blood stain, I relaxed a lot. It seemed I was overthinking things. The blood stain on the grave had nothing to do with me. Maybe it was just a coincidence. I guess so. There aren't that many demons and ghosts in this world. How could I have encountered one? Seeing my expression soften, Wang Wen smiled and came over to hug my waist, explaining that he had many identical bedsheets. The one from last night was dirty, and he was afraid his mother would find out, so he changed it early in the morning. I nodded, relieved that it was just a false alarm. But for some reason, I always felt that something was off. Since last night, Wang Wen had become a different person. He was passionate at night, which was one thing, but his behavior today was also very strange, especially at the cemetery. He lied to his mother for me and did it so casually. Before, he would blush whenever he lied. I turned my head and stared at Wang Wen, wanting to see what was so strange about him. But after a moment, he gave a sly smile, pressed close to me, pushed me onto the bed, and asked, "Baby, is your husband too handsome, making you unable to resist wanting another round?" With that, he lowered his head to kiss me, and his cold hands wouldn't stay still. I was already very tired last night, so seeing this, I was shocked. I didn't have time to study what was abnormal about him anymore, so I quickly grabbed his hand and begged for mercy. Fortunately, he was just teasing me. After kissing me, he got up, went out, and brought food in for me. After I finished eating, he said he had something to do and would be back in the evening, telling me to wait obediently at home for him. I asked him where he was going and what he was doing. Because I was unfamiliar with the place and felt uncomfortable staying at his house alone, I wanted him to stay with me, or take me with him. As a result, he just smiled mysteriously and asked me if I wanted to marry him. If I did, I had to wait obediently at home. Once he took care of everything, we could get married. I had already given myself to him, so of course I wanted to marry him. I asked if he was planning to go to his relative's house to discuss the wedding. If so, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to go along. Wang Wen smiled, said nothing more, and gave me a deep kiss on the forehead before leaving. Chapter 5. A joint burial mound for husband and wife. After he left, I felt bored being alone, so I leaned against the bed and played with my phone until I dozed off. When I woke up, it was already evening. Wang Wen's mother had already finished making dinner and called me to eat. Because she had pressed me at the cemetery about whether I was on my period, Wang Wen's mother looked a little embarrassed when she saw me. During the meal, she enthusiastically piled food onto my plate. I also wanted to improve my relationship with my future mother-in-law, so I proactively brought up a topic, asking her what exactly was going on with the blood mound today, why it suddenly exploded, and what it had to do with women's menstruation. As soon as I asked, Wang Wen's mother started talking like a loudspeaker, saying that the mound was quite old, a joint burial mound for a married couple, with 2 coffins buried beneath it. But last year, the mound had been dug up once, and the coffin containing the woman had been stolen. So this time, the blood mound exploding must be the male's spirit seeking revenge and searching for his wife. While telling the story, Wang Wen's mother's face showed fear, not hiding her superstition, and she solemnly told me not to go near that cemetery, that it wasn't peaceful there right now. After listening, I just smiled silently. The woman was stolen last year, so why is the vengeful spirit only coming out this year to seek revenge? That alone was enough to calm me down. And even if there really was a vengeful spirit, what does that have to do with those 5 girls? Why did it hurt them? Wang Wen's mother explained that ghosts are yin creatures, and the yang energy outside is too strong, so going out carelessly would burn them. Therefore, if they want to take revenge, they must have an opportunity, and a girl on her period is that opportunity. Menstruation is purely yin, very beneficial to ghosts, so there has always been a rule in the area that women on their period are not allowed to go to the cemetery, otherwise they will be haunted. She spoke with such conviction, as if she knew a lot about it. After speaking, she urged me to eat, saying that the Wang widow had treated all the girls on their periods, so this matter was considered over, and I didn't need to think about it anymore. I wasn't thinking much about it originally, but her words made me start to feel uneasy. After all, I did go to the cemetery during my period, violating the taboo, and since yesterday after I visited the grave, Wang Wen has seemed like a different person. What if I'm okay, but Wang Wen is possessed? Thinking of this, I hesitated, looking at Wang Wen's mother, wanting to tell her that Wang Wen might be possessed, but every time I was about to say it, I swallowed it back down. Ultimately, it was just my speculation, without any evidence. I also didn't know how to describe Wang Wen's change to his mother. Was I supposed to say that Wang Wen was very simple and honest before, but now he's suddenly become corrupted? After thinking it over, I decided not to say anything and wait for Wang Wen to return before deciding. So I waited all evening, and it wasn't until after 2 in the morning that Wang Wen came back. He looked like he had just gone through a strenuous workout, his breathing heavy and labored. But even so, he still dove into the blanket, his cold hands immediately separating my legs, and without a word, he slipped inside. Chapter 6. Excitement, struggle. I flinched, dodging him while asking what happened and why he was so late. He didn't say anything, just puffed and panted, his breathing becoming heavier and heavier. It seemed my avoidance had angered him. His movements became rough, pressing me down and pinning me beneath him, forcing himself on me like a violent storm. I struggled with all my might, but I was no match for his strength. Moreover, it seemed the more I struggled, the more excited and intense he became. What was even more terrifying was that I couldn't speak at this moment. No matter how I tried to call for help, my throat felt blocked, unable to produce any sound. After he calmed down, I was stiff on the bed, my body felt torn apart, completely drained of energy. As for him, after being satisfied, he no longer panted as before, and his body was no longer as cold as when he first returned. He gently hugged me and said, "Go to sleep. When you wake up, your body will recover." How could I dare to sleep? At this moment, I could confirm that the person hugging me wasn't Wang Wen, or rather, it wasn't the Wang Wen from before. Last night's frenzy could be attributed to Wang Wen's naturally passionate nature, but even if he had the courage of a lion, Wang Wen wouldn't dare to force himself on me. So, there's a problem. Who is this Wang Wen hugging me? Could it be that Wang Wen is possessed by that vengeful ghost? Did I sleep with a ghost last night? Is the menstrual blood on that blood tomb mine? I huddled in Wang Wen's arms all night, my nerves stretched taut, not because I didn't want to escape, but because my body was numb and I didn't have the strength to slip away. Fortunately, he fell asleep quickly, breathing evenly, while I trembled for a long time before gradually regaining my senses. Clearly, he's not Wang Wen, but I can't expose him now, and I can't let him know that I suspect him. After all, ghosts and demons are ruthless killers. While he doesn't want to kill me yet, it's best to strike first. Now, I just need to wait until dawn, find an opportunity to go to Widow Wang's house and ask her for help. She's so powerful. She'll definitely have a way to save me. Having a solution made me feel much better, but waiting for dawn was long, and my plan encountered a problem. Wang Wen had been awake for a long time, looked to be in a good mood, and even turned to kiss my forehead. Then, he leaned against the headboard to read a book, not mentioning going out to eat, just waiting beside me. I was so scared that my heart pounded. I could only continue to pretend to be asleep, but I was also very anxious. If he keeps watching me like this, how can I go to Widow Wang's house? I didn't dare to make any rash moves, keeping my eyes tightly closed, but before long, my stomach betrayed me, making gurgling noises. At that moment, I just wanted to kill myself. Seriously, what kind of situation is this? I'm about to die, and I'm still hungry. Sure enough, the rumbling sound in my stomach attracted Wang Wen's attention. In the dim light, I felt his face getting closer, very close to me. I could even feel the breath he was trying to suppress. I was so scared that my scalp went numb, and my breathing became erratic. Immediately after, I heard a sly laugh, and cold lips covered mine. "Ah!" I screamed in fright, and the last stretched nerve finally snapped. I sat up abruptly and pushed him away. His eyes were staring straight at me, a mocking expression on his face. "You deliberately pretended to be asleep just to wait for me to kiss you, huh?" Chapter 7. Hair Ash Subdues Demons. It's not. I was so flustered, not knowing whether I was angry or scared, my face flushed red. "It's not. Then why is your heart beating so fast?" He smiled even brighter, stared at me for a while, and then suddenly put his arm around my waist, pulled me out of bed, and carried me straight outside. I was extremely nervous, afraid he would notice something, and hurriedly asked him where he was taking me. "Let's eat. You're hungry." He said those words, then carried me to the dining table right in front of Wang Wen's parents, and scooped a bowl of porridge for me. I was so embarrassed I wanted to get cancer, and could only bury my head in the porridge under the gaze of Wang Wen's parents. Thank goodness after eating, Vuong Van said he had something to go out for, telling me to stay at home and watch TV, or talk to his mother to improve our relationship. I nodded incessantly, more eagerly than a chicken pecking at rice, overjoyed that my chance had come. After Vuong Van left, I changed into another set of clothes, made up an excuse to lie to Vuong Van's mother, and then went straight to the house of the Vuong widow. The Vuong widow was very well known in this area. After inquiring a little, I immediately knew that her house was in the west of the village, not far from the cemetery. The gate was bright red, and a row of chicken feathers was hung on the door, making it easy to find. I had been to the cemetery before, so I knew the way. I found that bright red gate very quickly, but the chicken feathers hanging on the door looked unusual, completely contrasting with the bright red gate, looking extremely eye-catching. Black chicken feathers were rare, but I was sure this was the Vuong widow's house. I knocked on the door, told the Vuong widow about Vuong Van's changes, and also about my visiting the grave while I was menstruating. The Vuong widow still looked as fierce as ever. After hearing what I said, her face turned black, and her eyes were very gloomy. She asked me, "Why didn't you say you were menstruating yesterday?" I pushed all the blame onto Vuong Van, saying that he wouldn't let me say it. Now I realized the seriousness of the problem, so I came to her for help. The Vuong widow was silent for a long time after hearing that, but then didn't hold it against me, and told me to follow her into the house. I trailed behind her, discovering that she was the only one in the house. The decoration in the house was also very old. It seemed that there were no windows in the house, so it was very dark. Even though it was summer, I still felt that her house was extremely cold, no different from the feeling when I was outside the cemetery. The Vuong widow told me to sit down, and then rummaged for something in the house. I thought she was looking for the gourd knife to draw blood, so I was so nervous that my palms were covered in sweat. Unexpectedly, after rummaging for a while, she didn't intend to draw my blood, but took out a small ceramic jar and handed it to me, telling me to open it and take a look. I listened and opened it, and was so frightened when I saw what was inside that I almost threw the ceramic jar away. Inside was white powder, plus the shape of this ceramic jar. Needless to say, I knew it was an urn. That white powder was definitely cremation ashes. Seeing my reaction, the Vuong widow laughed, as if laughing at me for being cowardly, saying, "What's there to be afraid of? It's not cremation ashes, it's just hair ash that I collected. A living person's yang energy mainly gathers on the top of their head, so the hair ash of a living person also has a lot of yang energy, which is a treasure for suppressing demons. As long as you take this back and sprinkle it on your boyfriend, he will be injured by the hair ash, and his soul will dissipate." "It's that simple?" I asked. Knowing that it was the hair ash of a living person, I wasn't scared anymore. But this Vuong widow is really amazing. So much hair ash, how much hair did she have to burn after all? Chapter 8. Going towards the bright river. It's that simple. But you must remember, this thing has a great destructive force against demons. Just a touch and it will obliterate their souls. Think carefully about it. The widow Vuong was still uneasy, looking at me seriously as she instructed me. I nodded, finally breathing a sigh of relief. The more damage this did to the demons, the better. If Vuong Van was truly possessed, I only hoped that the demon's soul would be annihilated. I carefully put away the ceramic jar, thanked the widow Vuong, and returned to Vuong Van's house. I had only been back for a short while when Vuong Van also returned, carrying a large bag filled with all the things I like to eat. He gave me the snacks and said he had been out all afternoon and was tired, wanting to go to his room for a nap, and that I didn't need to wake him up for dinner later. I nodded, looking at his gentle, smiling face, and was momentarily stunned. If he hadn't shown those strange signs last night, I still wouldn't believe that Vuong Van was possessed. Although he was very different from before, apart from his aggression last night, I seemed to like this frivolous side of him even more. Watching Vuong Van's back as he went to his room, my mind was in turmoil. Later, after he fell asleep, I just needed to go there, quietly sprinkle the hair ash on him, and his soul would be annihilated, and the honest, simple Vuong Van would return. But for some reason, thinking of these things, I didn't feel relieved at all. My mood was even heavier, as if a large stone was weighing me down. Vuong Van must have been very tired, because he fell asleep as soon as he lay down, his breathing even. Glancing at the bag of snacks he bought for me, I silently hugged the small ceramic jar and went to my bedroom. He's a demon. Even if he's good to me and doesn't hurt me, he's still a demon. Moreover, he's taken over Vuong Van's body to live with me, and even done that with me. That alone is not a good thing. Thinking about how violent he was with me last night, I made up my mind to open the ceramic jar and sprinkle a handful of ashes on him. The moment the hair ash touched him, he suddenly jumped out of bed, but he didn't scream as I had imagined, nor did he struggle. Only his face gradually blurred, and his body changed as well. Before long, Vuong Van completely transformed into someone else. Looking at the unfamiliar face before me, I was stunned. This person is so handsome. More handsome than all the popular heartthrobs on TV, and his figure is even more manly than theirs, with a height of at least 1.8 meters, and well-proportioned, firm muscles. I couldn't take my eyes off him, and even forgot that he was a demon, forgetting that I was in a dangerous situation. Loc Duong, I've treated you well. Yet you want my soul to be annihilated. He moved closer to me, his eyes extremely cold, like an angry lion. His icy, hard hand grabbed my neck, and with a little force, he lifted me into the air. The feeling of suffocation enveloped me, pulling me back to reality. I began to struggle violently. No matter how handsome he was still a demon who wanted to kill me, and I was about to die. But I still couldn't understand where I had gone wrong. As if realizing my confusion, he grinned, threw me onto the bed, then picked up the ceramic jar and sprinkled all the hair ash on himself. Strange, isn't it? This ash can't obliterate my soul. Do you know why? Because the hair in this jar isn't from a living person. The raw material is from a dead person, so this ash is also called bone ash. It has no effect on me at all. Why is that? I was completely stunned. Bone ash? Why bone ash? Why would Widow Vuong lie to me like that? Because you're stupid. Seeing me stunned, he sneered, looking very pleased with himself, and took a jet black feather from his person and threw it at me. Looking at this strange black feather, I immediately understood. This was clearly a black chicken feather that hung on the Widow Vuong's door. So you and Widow Vuong are accomplices. My whole body trembled, so angry that my throat felt like it was on fire. It seemed that I was really going to die. I had just tried to annihilate his soul, so now he definitely wanted to kill me. Chapter 9. Threatened by a ghost. So who exactly are you? Are you the man from that blood tomb? Was it you who was with me the other day? Where are you hiding, Wang Wen? Since I was about to die anyway, I suddenly mustered up some courage and asked all the questions that had been weighing on my mind. If I was going to die, I couldn't die so confused. At the very least, I needed to know who to seek revenge on after I became a ghost. Of course, it's me. If it wasn't me, do you think that Wang Wen could plow as well as I can? He snorted coldly, a sly smile appearing on his handsome face. He leaned closer to me and said, "Now that you know I'm not Wang Wen, I don't need to act anymore. My name is Sumu, and I came out of that blood tomb to do something in the mortal realm, so you have to help me. Before I finish everything, you have to listen to me. As for Wang Wen, I can't tell you about him now. You just need to know that his life is in your hands. As long as you behave, he won't die." Based on what? Go find your wife. Why should I be involved? I said angrily. He dared to use Wang Wen's life to threaten me. Hearing this, Sumu frowned, looking slightly surprised. He asked me, "How do you know I'm looking for someone? You two were originally buried together in the same tomb. Then, the female's coffin was stolen. Now that you've come out, what else would you be doing if not looking for her?" I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Sumu nodded. "It seems you're not as dumb as I thought. Now that you know my purpose, you must help me. Otherwise, you will die within 3 months, and Wang Wen will die too." He said it very casually, but his expression didn't look like he was joking. Thinking about how young I was and how my beautiful life had just begun, all my courage disappeared. I hesitantly said, "If I listen to you, Can you guarantee that I'll live a long life, and Wang Wen won't die either? Of course, I can't guarantee you'll live a long life, but it's no problem for you to live until you die of natural causes, Su Mu said. Since he had said that, I had no choice but to agree to his request. Otherwise, he might just strangle me to death immediately. Seeing that I agreed, Su Mu didn't say anything more to me, nor did he mention taking a lunch break. He pulled out the suitcase and put both of our clothes inside. I didn't understand it all and cautiously asked him what he was doing with the clothes. He said we were leaving. After searching for 2 days, he was sure that the person he was looking for had left, heading southeast. Southeast? I was stunned. Wasn't that the direction of Zhongming? My home was in Zhongming. Why would his wife not stay obediently here and go to Zhongming? Before I could figure it out, Su Mu had finished packing, transformed into Wang Wen's appearance, said goodbye to Wang Wen's parents, and hurriedly dragged me away. We bought tickets directly to Zhongming. On the way, Su Mu and I became a little more familiar, so I asked him, "How did you know your wife went to Zhongming? Will you two be reunited after you find her in Zhongming, and then we'll go our separate ways?" Before I could finish speaking, Su Mu's face showed annoyance, and he directly interrupted me. "Her name is Linyana, and she's not my wife." Not his wife? I was really surprised. I quickly asked him why Linyana wasn't his wife but was buried with him. Did his family fear that he would be lonely after death, so they just found a random girl to bury with him? I was really curious and asked a series of questions. After all, Su Mu was so handsome. No, a handsome ghost. It's a pity he has a wife. I wanted to ask him more about his situation, but I was afraid he would get angry, so I shut my mouth and leaned against the car window, enjoying the scenery along the way. Chapter 10. My cousin has gone mad. After 3 hours, we arrived in Jiangmin. After getting out of the car, I called my mother to let her know I was back in Jiangmin. But it seemed very chaotic on the other end, and my mother's voice also carried a hint of confusion, as if something had happened. I quickly asked her what was wrong. She said that she and my father were at the psychiatric hospital, that my cousin had gone mad and had just been brought to the hospital, and that her condition wasn't improving. I anxiously asked what had happened from beginning to end. My cousin is my uncle's daughter and has always been very normal, so how could she suddenly go crazy? My mother said she must have been triggered by something, but we would have to wait for the doctor to examine her to know for sure. Then she told me to come to the hospital as soon as I got back. With that, she sent me the hospital's address. After hanging up, I turned to ask Ramak if he wanted to go to the psychiatric hospital with me. He rolled his eyes at me and said, "That's a given. I just got here and don't know my way around. Where else would I go if not with you?" "Of course, you'd go to find Lam Yenhe. The sooner you find her, the sooner you leave me," I thought to myself. But having witnessed his ferocity before, I didn't want to provoke him, so I said, "You can come to the hospital with me, but you have to turn into Vuong Van, so I don't have to explain things to my mother." Himuk grinned and didn't make a fuss. He immediately transformed into Vuong Van, and then we took a taxi straight to the psychiatric hospital. When I found my parents, my cousin was hiding under the bed and screaming. Her hair was disheveled, and her face was indescribably pale, as if she had seen something terrifying. My aunt had cried all her tears. There were streaks of blood on her clothes, as if they had been grabbed by blood-stained fingers. As soon as she saw us arrive, my mother's expression softened slightly. She told me to go see what I could do, since I had been close to my cousin since childhood, and perhaps I could call her out. I nodded and walked closer to the bed, gently calling her name. After hearing my voice, she suddenly raised her head, her eyes wide with panic, staring at me like a wild animal, completely out of her mind. Caught off guard, I jumped back in shock. What was even more terrifying were her hands. All 10 fingers were bare and covered in blood, without a single fingernail left. It seemed the blood on my aunt's clothes was from my cousin grabbing her. "Careful!" Just as I was in a daze, Himok suddenly shouted. Immediately afterward, I saw two shadows lunging at me, and Himok pulled me to the ground. My cousin went completely crazy, opening her mouth and biting down hard on Himok's shoulder, causing a blackish blood to quickly flow out of the wound. As for my cousin, after biting Himok, she screamed miserably, as if she were the one who had been bitten, and quickly released Himok and retreated back under the bed. "Are you okay?" Seeing the blood on Himok's shoulder, I felt inexplicably nervous, afraid that something bad would happen to him from being bitten like that. "I'm fine," Himok replied. He helped me up from the ground and then stood in front of me, saying, "She's acting very strangely right now. Don't get close to her." With that, he disregarded the danger and reached out to grab my cousin's arm, pulling her out from under the bed. At the same time, I saw Himok's lips moving slightly, as if he was muttering something, but there wasn't a single sound. After he muttered like that, my cousin suddenly became quiet. She obediently lay down on the bed, her eyes blankly staring at Himok. After muttering for a while, Himok reached out and pulled apart my cousin's eyelids to examine something, and then grabbed the spoon beside him and pried open her mouth. Chapter 11. Living Scarecrow. Her mouth was full of fresh blood, with even a few fingernails left behind. What was even more horrifying was that her tongue had turned a purplish black, as if she had been poisoned. After that, Sumu examined my cousin's hands and feet. When he was finished, he frowned, his expression a little unpleasant. "It's a living scarecrow. Someone used a living scarecrow on her." My aunt stopped crying when she heard this and went straight to Sumu. She grabbed his hand, as if grasping at a lifeline, and said, "What is a living scarecrow? Wang Wen, you have a way to save her, right? Please save my niece. She's always been close to Loc Duong since she was little. You must save her." With that, she couldn't help but burst into tears again. Sumu frowned and slowly withdrew his hand from hers, saying nothing. Seeing my cousin like this, I didn't feel good either, so I went to Sumu and said, "If you know what's going on, you can save her, right? Can you save my cousin?" "Why should I save her? She's your cousin, not mine. What do I get out of saving her?" Sumu said softly. "What do you want to get out of it? I already agreed to go find Lin Yanhe with you. What more do you want?" I was extremely anxious. It really hurt me to see my cousin like this. If he could calm her down when she was acting crazy, he must have a way to save her. He lowered his head to look at me, his eyes as deep as a swamp, not knowing what he was thinking. Finally, he took my hand and said, "Let's go outside and talk." With that, he pulled me out of the hospital room, found a deserted place in the hallway, and said, "Do you know what a living scarecrow is? It's a type of insect that is nurtured with the human body, specializing in eating the souls of people, so people affected by the living scarecrow are crazy and manic, with strong aggressive tendencies, because their souls have been devoured by the living scarecrow, turning them into living scarecrows. In this situation, it's better to kill her than to save her." "Why is it like this?" My heart constricted, and my eyes immediately blurred with tears. I only thought that my cousin had encountered some kind of trauma, which was why she was so unstable. I didn't expect it to be so serious. "Do you mean that she can't be saved anymore? Is there an insecticide that can drive the living scarecrow out, or some other way? My uncle only has this one child. If something happens to her, how will my aunt and uncle live? You're a ghost, and a centuries-old one at that. Isn't there any way to save her?" I asked, crying and grabbing Sumu's sleeve. "Watch your words. What do you mean by old ghost?" "It's just that my time as a ghost has been a little long," Sumu corrected. He didn't expect me to cry. A look of confusion flashed in his eyes, and he reached out to wipe away my tears, sighing as he said, "If you insist on saving her, it's not entirely impossible, but it will come at a great cost." "What great cost?" Seeing a glimmer of hope, I immediately perked up and asked him, "Kiss me, a deep French kiss." Sumu said, his gaze lingering on my lips. A sly smile crept onto his face. My face flushed red. I never thought that at such a serious moment, he would make such a request. But I didn't care much about anything at the moment. Fortunately, he was still using Wang Wen's face, although not as handsome as Sumu. It could at least make me feel a little less embarrassed. So, I decisively tiptoed and actively pressed my lips to his, slowly reaching out my tongue. His hand also reached around and placed on my back, pulling me into his chest. The moment my tongue touched his territory, he immediately turned from passive to active. I didn't know when his face had returned to its original appearance, as he fiercely sucked on me. Chapter 12. Charging into the cemetery alone. I felt like all my strength had been drained away by him. Before long, my body went limp, and I collapsed into his arms. As I gasped for breath, nearly fainting, he finally released me, his face quickly reverting to Vuong Van. "Let's go, let's get the things we'll need later," he said, naturally taking my hand and leading me out. I tried to pull my hand away several times, but I couldn't manage it, so I had to let him hold it. He led me out of the hospital and into the nearest supermarket, buying a bunch of dairy products like cheese and butter, and 2 bags of sugar. Unable to contain my curiosity, I asked him if these things could drive away the living scarecrow. The living scarecrow likes to eat human souls. Would it even be interested in these sweet dairy products? Rarely did Mok refrain from calling me stupid. He explained that these things weren't for driving away the living scarecrow, but for attracting tomb rats. Tomb rats are the natural enemies of living scarecrows, specializing in hunting them. And like other rats, tomb rats love sweet things like butter and cheese. After introducing the tomb rats, he explained in detail how to catch them, also saying that because they specialize in hunting living scarecrows, they often appear in swarms in cemeteries. Hearing this, I felt a bad premonition rise in my heart. I asked Mok, "Are you planning to take me to the cemetery?" After experiencing grave visits twice in Vuongvan's hometown, I now hated places like cemeteries, and even had a psychological obsession with them. Mok smirked and nodded, saying that was right. Not only was he planning to take me to the cemetery, but he was also going to throw me in there, because tomb rats are very sensitive to yin energy. With him around, the tomb rats wouldn't dare to come out, which is why he explained so carefully how to catch them. At this point, I really wanted to cry, but to save my cousin, I had to pay a price. Helpless, I suppressed my fear and followed Mok to the cemetery. It was already past 10 o'clock at night when we arrived at the cemetery. Throughout the cemetery, there wasn't a person, let alone a streetlight. There were only 7 or 8 leaning tombstones, densely packed together. Under the hazy moonlight, they looked ominous and terrifying. I couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva and turning to look at Mok. The strange thing was, he was clearly a ghost, 100 times more terrifying than those tombstones and the cemetery, but he made me feel inexplicably safe, as if as long as he was here, I wouldn't be in any danger. "Go on, once you're inside, just go straight ahead. No matter what happens, don't turn around. I'll be waiting for you nearby. Once you catch the tomb rat, don't hesitate, just run straight out of the cemetery." Mok also looked at me. He took my hand and instructed me. I nodded, holding the things I bought in the afternoon in my hand. Under Mok's watchful gaze, I gritted my teeth and walked into the cemetery, placing a piece of cheese and some sugar on each tombstone as he had taught me, then held my breath and listened to the sounds in the cemetery. Before long, I heard a noise from the tombstone behind me. A small, snow-white rat was scurrying cautiously towards the cheese, squeaking excitedly. It wasn't just it that was excited. I was even more excited than it was at this point, even forgetting the fear of being in the cemetery. I slowly walked towards the white rat. Mok said that tomb rats are very vigilant, and I absolutely couldn't make a move as soon as I saw one, otherwise I definitely wouldn't be able to catch it. I had to wait until it had finished eating the cheese before making a move. By then, It would be too full to run and would only be able to be my prey. I carefully approached the white rat, nervously watching its every move, just waiting for it to finish eating so I could make my move. After waiting for a while, the last piece of cheese was about to be finished, when suddenly I felt a cold gust of wind blow on the back of my neck, like someone was breathing on my neck. Chapter 13. Who to Trust. Immediately, my whole body stiffened, cold sweat pouring out of me in fear. My first reaction was to turn around and see what it was. But Moc had already said that once inside the graveyard, you mustn't turn your head, nor should you return the way you came. I had no choice but to endure it, my whole body trembling from the cold gust of wind. Luckily, the white mouse had finished its piece of cheese, so I seized the opportunity to pounce on it. Just as I was about to catch the Loc mouse, a cold hand suddenly grabbed my ankle and dragged me backward. I couldn't control my body anymore and was pulled back a long way. The Loc mouse, startled by the noise, squeaked twice, and a white streak flashed past. I couldn't see it anymore. Moc, save me! Seeing that there was no chance to catch the Loc mouse, I didn't have time to pay attention to it and screamed loudly. I didn't want to die yet, and I certainly didn't want to die in such a dark and terrifying place. The thing behind me seemed flustered when it heard me scream, using another cold hand to cover my mouth to stop me from making a sound. Then, a familiar voice reached my ears. Don't shout, it's me. Why is it you? I looked at her in horror. The person behind me now was none other than the person who had tricked me so badly, Widow Duong. Seeing that I recognized her, Widow Duong sighed and told me not to make a sound before slowly letting go of me. Why are you here? What were you doing grabbing me just now? If it weren't for you, I would have caught the Loc mouse. Seeing her pretending to be a ghost and scaring me again, I was furious. She was still very careful, looking around to make sure there was no one else in the graveyard before taking out a small cage. Inside was a Loc mouse. She handed it to me and said, "Don't be angry yet. I searched for you for a long time before I found you. Why were you looking for me?" Seeing her take out the Loc mouse, my anger subsided somewhat. If I'm not mistaken, you've already had your life essence drained by that ghostly thing, haven't you? I don't know why you're hiding what you've been through, but I can tell you that if you continue to be involved with that ghostly thing, he will drain your life essence dry. By then, he will successfully revive, and you will wither away, turning into a dried corpse. Widow Duong still looked as fierce as ever, but this time she stared intently at me, not seeming like she was just trying to scare me. She stunned me, and I asked, "You're a Moc's accomplice. Why are you telling me all this?" Widow Duong was slightly startled when she heard that, then frowned and asked me, "Why do you say that?" "My family has been a caught female shaman for generations, specializing in dispelling ghosts and demons. How could I be an accomplice of demons?" Seeing her speak so firmly, I became uneasy and had to recount the story of how I went to her for help that day, and then asked if she had given me the ashes. After hearing it, she slapped her thigh and realized that the ghost had made me hallucinate. I didn't go to look for her at all, and she didn't give me any ashes either. The ghost must have realized that I was planning to look for her, so it created the illusion to mislead me. That's impossible. I didn't believe that Moc was that powerful, and I didn't believe that he was that scheming. Seeing that I didn't believe her, Widow Duong shook her head helplessly, took out a bright red rooster feather and handed it to me, saying, "This is the rooster feather that wards off evil spirits that hangs on my door. If I'm right, the feather you saw was black, wasn't it?" "Yes, it was black." Chapter 14. Blushing, treating my cousin. "That's right then. The black feather you saw wasn't a chicken feather, but a crow feather." Since ancient times, crows have always been associated with dark and sinister energy. Moreover, you were in a cemetery at the time, so that ghost could completely rely on the yin energy in the cemetery to create an illusion to deceive you, making you willingly offer him your vital essence, said Widow Vuong. Having said that, she looked around warily, as if she was hiding from someone. Then, she took out a golden nail as thick as a finger and gave it to me, instructing, "Within 3 days, you must stab this nail into that ghost. He will be severely injured in his core energy. At that point, just call me, and I'll come and help you catch him." After speaking, she shoved a business card into my hand and left without looking back, leaving me standing dumbfounded in the cemetery. I don't know how long passed before I faintly heard Tumak calling my name. Only then did I regain my senses, respond to him, and bring Rat of Devastation out. Tumak, waiting outside the gate, was already very impatient. His handsome face looked very grim. I don't know if it was an illusion, but I felt like he was worried about me. Seeing me come out unharmed, his expression softened slightly. He stepped forward, took the cage from my hand, and scolded me for being an idiot, taking so long just to catch a rat. If I hadn't come out, he would have thought I'd been kidnapped by the rat. With him looking so furious, it was hard for me to associate him with a scheming and despicable ghost. Was he lingering with me because he wanted to drain my vital essence to revive himself? My mind was in complete turmoil. I didn't know whether to trust Widow Vuong or Tumak. I silently put away the business card and the nail that Widow Vuong had given me, then followed behind Tumak, letting him scold me. Tumak scolded me for a while, and I didn't argue back. He found it strange and asked if I was tired. I hummed in agreement. Before I could finish speaking, I felt my feet lift off the ground. Tumak swept me up into his arms. "Go to sleep. Just catching a rat made you so tired. You're really useless." He was still scolding me, but his actions were much gentler. He just carried me like that, very comfortably. My face flushed red. He was showing his true colors now. I wasn't used to this handsome face. Moreover, even Vuong Van had never held me so intimately. I struggled to get down, but he was very strong. The more I struggled, the tighter he held me. In the end, I had no strength left. I let him carry me all the way to the hospital. By the time we arrived at the hospital, it was almost dawn. My parents were still at the hospital. Seeing that we had been gone for so long, they quickly asked us where we had gone and if anything had happened. I shook my head and smiled, saying that Vuong Van had found a way to cure my cousin and told them not to worry. Seeing Vuong Van calm my crazy cousin down with their own eyes, they believed in him very much. Knowing that my cousin could be saved, their faces were filled with joy. Tumak told me to take my parents and aunt out to get something to eat, and no one was allowed to enter before he came out. I was still worried about leaving my cousin in his hands, so I offered to stay with him and assist him later. Unexpectedly, Tumak saw through my intentions immediately. His eyes narrowed, his gaze darkened, and he asked me, "You don't trust me?" It was true that I didn't trust him very much, but being exposed like that right in front of him, I said fearfully, "Why wouldn't I trust you? You're so amazing. You can definitely make my cousin regain her senses, run and jump as usual, and be even healthier than before she went crazy." Before I could finish flattering him, Tumak lost his patience. He pushed me out of the hospital room and slammed the door shut. Chapter 15. The Nail. Disappointment. I was locked out. On the way to breakfast, my mother asked, "Have you and Wang Wen been arguing recently? I feel like Wang Wen has been acting strange ever since he came home this time, like he's become a different person. Or is it that Wang Wen's parents don't like you?" My heart tightened, and I quickly said, "Wang Wen is just worried about his cousin. His parents really like me. They gave me a welcome gift the first time we met and even took me to visit his grandmother's grave." My mother seemed relieved at this, and then for the entire breakfast, she only asked me about Wang Wen's family. I didn't dare tell my mother that Wang Wen was possessed, nor did I dare say that the Wang Wen they saw was no longer the real Wang Wen. I could only make things up. By the end of breakfast, I was mentally exhausted from all the lies. After eating, we returned to the hospital, resting on the long bench outside the ward. The door was still tightly closed, and it was very quiet inside, without a single sound. I was worried sick, fearing that Sumu couldn't save my cousin, and also fearing that what the widowed Mrs. Wang said was true, that Sumu had bad intentions. Could it be that after sucking my life essence, he would turn around and suck my cousin's? This thought made me even more anxious. I unconsciously took out the nail that the widowed Mrs. Wang had given me, thinking to myself, if Sumu really intends to do something to my cousin, I will stab him with this nail immediately. About half an hour later, the door of the ward finally opened. Sumu leaned against the door, his face pale, his body swaying as if he were about to fall, looking as if he were seriously injured. Even so, his eyes still lingered on my hand. "Where did you get this nail?" I felt guilty, quickly put the nail away, and ran over to support him. But after seeing the nail, his attitude changed completely. He didn't let me touch him, and his already pale face became even more bloodless. "Your cousin is safe now." His voice was icy cold, filled with disappointment towards me. After saying that, he staggered past me, as if he didn't know me at all. But before he could take a few steps, his whole body suddenly tilted to one side and crashed to the ground. "Sue!" I panicked and almost blurted out his name, quickly running over to lift him up. But I was stunned when I touched him. He was so tall, yet now he had no weight at all, as light as air. What's going on? Could it be that his soul is about to dissipate? In movies, before the soul dissipates, the bodies of demons and ghosts usually fade and become lighter. Before I could understand everything, my parents rushed over, asking me what was wrong with Wang Wen. While talking, my father reached out to help me support Sumu. I was flustered and sweating profusely, quickly pulling Sumu back, only saying that he was too tired, it wasn't a big deal, and I would take him back to rest first. After saying that, I told my parents to go visit my cousin, and then I quickly helped Sumu's weightless body leave the hospital, taking a taxi to the house Wang Wen rented. He lay on the bed, his eyes tightly closed, as if he were about to die. I could feel his body getting weaker and weaker. Even the yin energy that allowed him to maintain Wang Wen's face was gradually disappearing, returning to his original appearance. What should I do now? He's clearly a ghost. Why is he so foolish, injuring himself like this just to save my cousin? Will he really not make it? I felt extremely guilty. I didn't trust him just now, and even intended to use the nail that the widowed Mrs. Wang gave me to stab him. I'm really awful. But now is not the time to blame myself. Sumu is getting weaker and weaker. I must save him. Chapter 16. A Strange Forum, Raising Demons. With that thought, I immediately pulled out my phone and Googled how to prevent demons from having their souls annihilated. But the search results were very disappointing. People were only asking how to annihilate the souls of demons. There were basically no results that I wanted. I didn't know anyone in this field, nor could I call Widow Vuong. She said she was mortal enemies with demons. If she knew Urmuk was in this situation, she would definitely come and capture Urmuk without hesitation. While I was racking my brains, a link on the screen caught my attention. It was an article from a strange forum with the title, "Time Monk of Master Level Exposes All the Secrets of Raising Demons." Raising demons? At least it wasn't related to exorcism like the other articles. I immediately clicked on it and quickly read through the entire article. The poster claimed to be Chinese, taken to Thailand as a child to learn how to make Buddha amulets, and had been a Thai monk for many years. Following the introduction was how to make Buddha amulets along with their miraculous powers, written incredibly magically. Reading it, you knew it was an advertisement for the Buddha amulet. I immediately recognized it as a scam, but I still wanted to read the content about raising demons, so I patiently continued reading. The person introduced much less about raising demons than the introduction to the Buddha amulet. He only briefly talked about the purpose, as well as the advantages and disadvantages of raising demons, and finally said that because raising demons was too unethical, he wouldn't go into more detail. Oh my God, are you kidding me? I clicked on this because of the title about raising demons, and as a result, this person heavily promoted the Buddha amulet, then only briefly mentioned a few sentences about raising demons. I angrily clicked on the report button, accusing this person of spreading feudal superstitious ideas, then immediately left the website, hesitating whether to call Widow Vuong. Maybe if I asked indirectly, I could find a way to save Tmok. As I was thinking, my phone suddenly rang. It was an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, then answered. As soon as I said hello, the other end began to scold me, saying that I was crazy, that I reported his article for no reason, cutting off his path to making money, and that people like me would definitely not have a good end, and that demons would knock on my door in the middle of the night. I couldn't help but frown. The other end was a man, obviously the owner of that scam article, but how did he know I had reported him? How did he know my phone number? I interrupted his scolding and asked about my confusion. He was initially very angry, grumbling and cursing me, but seeing me ask that, he became excited and said to me in an arrogant tone, "You reported me for spreading feudal superstitious ideas. You don't believe there are demons in this world, do you? Let me tell you the truth. It's thanks to the demon I raised that I know your information. If you don't believe me, tell me your address, and I'll send my little demon to your house for a visit. Then I'll know right away if you're a beauty or a monster, and even know what clothes you're wearing. If I'm wrong, all the curses I just said will come true on me." He spoke with certainty, seemingly very confident in himself. I immediately told him my address, partly to see him lose face when he was wrong, and partly because I hoped what he said was true. If he really raised a little demon, then there would definitely be a way to save Tmok. Knowing my address, he laughed coldly, then I heard him chanting on the other end of the phone, sounding like Thai. After he finished chanting, I suddenly felt a chill down my back, as if a cold wind had rushed in. Chapter 17. The Strange Little Devil. Immediately after, the other end of the phone echoed with that person's arrogant voice, saying, "You're wearing a figure-hugging black top and jean shorts, looking quite beautiful. Your body is pretty good too. The only flaw is that your chest is a bit small, like an airport runway." He only managed to say half of that when he suddenly raised his voice, as if he'd seen a ghost. "Oh my God, you're raising a ghost too, and one that's over 100 years old." Having said that, he seemed utterly terrified, hung up the phone with a snap, then a gust of wind swept past me and vanished in an instant, the whole room returning to normal. Hello? I hadn't even finished speaking. How could he just hang up on me like that? So I quickly called the number back, but that bastard had already turned off his phone. I called several times, but it was just switched off every time. With no other option, I went back to that strange forum, searched for Buddha amulets, and tried to see if the poster had posted anything else. Sure enough, there were many posts related to Buddha necklaces in that forum, all posted by the same person. It seemed he frequently advertised on this forum. I immediately sent a message asking the poster about methods for raising demons. But no matter how many messages I sent, they just sank like stones to the bottom of the sea, without a single response. The poster's phone was still switched off. Looking at Sumu, who still had her eyes tightly closed, I was so anxious that my hands were sweating. I don't know why, but I had the feeling that the poster was online, just deliberately ignoring me. Really out of options, I had to leave a comment under his post, calling him a scammer, saying he wasn't a Thai monk at all, and the Buddha amulets I bought from him were all fake, 100% made of plastic. After wearing them, not only did they not bring good luck, but I kept encountering misfortunes, leading to injuries and bankruptcy. After commenting, fearing it wasn't convincing enough, I went online to find some pictures of Thai Buddha amulets to upload. While I was diligently commenting under each and every post, a message was sent to my inbox from the poster. Big sis, you're scaring me. It's just about raising ghosts. Stay home and wait. I'm coming to find you now. He was online after all. But before I could reply, his activity light went off, and then he went offline immediately. More than an hour later, my doorbell rang. Already annoyed, I quickly rushed to open the door, but once I opened it, I was immediately stunned. Behind the door was a little boy, about 6 or 7 years old. The boy tilted his head back, his dark, shining eyes staring intently at me. "Little friend, are you at the wrong house? Where are your parents?" Deeply disappointed, and seeing that no adults were following the boy, I patiently asked. The boy shook his head without saying anything, his eyes still fixed on me. That gaze made me shiver, so I asked him what his name was and if he lived in this area too. The boy continued to shake his head, not uttering a single word, just staring at me. Just as I was suspecting that the boy was mute and about to call 110 to report it to the police, he suddenly put his hands together in a Y and said, "Sawadee-krup, sister, can I ask you something?" "What is it?" I paused, looking at the boy in astonishment. So he could talk, and he even said Sawadee-krup. It seemed this boy was related to that poster. Could he be the little devil that the poster was raising? The thought flashed through my mind, and I shivered, instinctively scrutinizing the boy in front of me. Chapter 18. Tong Zu Execution. The little boy stood obediently outside the door, his voice clear and bright, his features distinct, and his expressions quite lively. Except for being a little dark-skinned, he looked no different from ordinary children, not like a demon at all. Maybe he's not a ghost. I walked around the boy, intending to see if he had a shadow under his feet. Suddenly, he grinned and asked me, "Hey, lady, are your brass sizer?" "What?" I was stunned, not sure if I had misheard. How could this little kid ask me such a question? Besides, who's Anna? I'm clearly a B. If I squeezed hard enough, I could even reach a C. Asking that was practically insulting me. Seeing that I didn't answer, the little boy's face darkened, and he seemed very angry. His small body suddenly shot into the air, his hand attacking my chest. I screamed in fright and retreated repeatedly, but the boy's movements were very fast. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of me. I only felt a cold gust of wind sweep across my chest, as if my heart had been frozen. After the boy successfully landed his sneak attack, he gave a strange smile and said, "Right, it's a..." But he still charged towards me. Clearly, his behavior wasn't that of a normal child. Or rather, he was a demon, the demon the poster was raising. I was scared to death and didn't have time to care if he was insulting me or not. I screamed and rushed back into the house, intending to run towards Sumu. Even though he was unconscious now, I still felt safe next to him. The demon quickly realized my intention. Clearly, he was also quite afraid of Sumu. His cold hands tightly hugged my waist, refusing to let me get close to Sumu. At this moment, I was filled with regret. If I had known the poster was so petty, I wouldn't have given him my address, so he wouldn't be able to send this little devil to torment me. While still regretting it, I suddenly felt something sharp and cold poking me the nail. It was the nail that the widow Wang had given me. She told me to use this nail to stab Sumu, so this nail must be something that suppresses demons. I was saved. My heart leapt with joy. I quickly pulled out the nail, intending to stab the demon. But before I could stab the nail into him, a whistle suddenly sounded outside the door. I subconsciously looked up, and in that moment of distraction, the little demon released my waist and turned into a gray shadow, rushing out of the door. At this moment, I realized that someone was standing outside the door. He was tall, about the same height as Sumu, but much thinner than Sumu, without any muscles. At this moment, his entire body was covered by a loose shirt. He wore a skull-patterned baseball cap and was completely covered up, making it impossible to see his face clearly. Seeming to have seen me looking at him, the person walked straight towards me. My heart pounded with apprehension. I immediately pulled out the nail that the widow Wang had given me and pointed it at him, threatening, "Don't move, or I'll stab you." But he didn't pay any attention to my threat. He came directly in front of me, snatched the nail from my hand, glanced at it, and said, "Hey lady, you're really cruel. He's such an adorable little boy, and you're willing to use Tong Ju execution to stab him. He's a demon." My voice trembled. Although I had met the centuries-old ancient ghost, Su Mu, he was always very gentle with me and never turned into a demon to scare me. Chapter 19. Soul-controlling nail. At first, that kid was normal, but then he suddenly attacked me, and with such a bizarre smile, how could I not be scared? "Lady, are you kidding me? You're raising a vengeful ghost over 100 years old, and you're scared of a little ghost not even 10 years old." As if hearing a fairy tale, the man laughed mockingly as he approached me. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of me. Now I could see his face clearly. He was very handsome, with distinct double eyelids and well-proportioned features. He looked like a mixed-race person. Even though he was wearing all black, he still had a dazzling aura. He also examined me. I could tell he was quite satisfied with my face. But when his eyes glanced down at my chest, his eyebrows furrowed, and he muttered, "Meow meow was right, you really are flat-chested. What a waste of that face." This was the first time someone had criticized my small chest so directly in front of me, and my face flushed with embarrassment. I covered my chest with one hand and said angrily, "What does my small chest have to do with you? You look like a decent person, but I didn't expect you to be such a pervert." "A pervert? I'm a man. Is being a pervert wrong? It's abnormal not to be a pervert," he said righteously with a smug look. "Give me back that nail. It's mine." Being silenced by him, I could only reach out to demand the nail back. He was clearly a lecher, and there was a powerful ghost behind him. I had to get the nail back to protect myself. "Yours? Do you even know what this is?" Realizing I didn't have enough confidence, the smile on his face suddenly disappeared, and he frowned at me. I paused mid-sentence. Besides knowing that this nail, given to me by the widow Wang, could suppress ghosts, I really didn't know what it was. "It's what? You don't know, do you?" Seeing I couldn't say anything, the man glared at me and said, "This thing is called Song Chu, which means a nail made from a corpse's in Thai. 80% of it is made of copper, and the remaining 20% is half red pigment and half the ashes of women who died during difficult childbirths. Usually, women who die during difficult childbirths are unwilling and harbor great resentment towards their husband's family, while also possessing a desire to protect the spirits of their children. These two conflicting emotions will constantly torment the woman, preventing her from ever being reincarnated. Gradually, the resentment will control all of her soul, so it also has a Chinese name, soul-controlling nail." "Soul-controlling nail? Do you mean this thing is originally from Thailand, and it doesn't exist in China? After being stabbed into a ghost, it won't hurt the ghost but only control its soul?" I was startled and looked at him skeptically. If what he said was true, then how did the widow Wang get this Thai item, and what was her purpose in giving it to me? Could she be wanting to control Sumu's soul? That's right. Although it only controls the souls of ghosts, it also greatly affects the living. Those with weak powers are easily bitten back by the resentment within the Song Chu. At best, they'll suffer from illness. At worst, they'll face ruin and destruction. "Do you still dare to say the Song Chu is yours now?" the man said as he released the nail in front of me, intending to return it to me. Knowing that the nail was made from ashes and contained the resentful souls of women who died during difficult childbirths, how could I dare to accept it? I instinctively backed away. Chapter 20. An unusual black smoke, demonic. Seeing this, the man didn't bother threatening me anymore. He directly stuffed the nail into his pocket and summoned the demon named Dudu to work. He whispered something into Dudu's ear, and Dudu obediently went out. Then, he asked if I had any used sanitary napkins, specifically those stained with my menstrual blood, saying that they possessed a very strong yin energy, which was excellent for replenishing the yin energy of demons. My face immediately flushed red with embarrassment. I had a whole pile of used sanitary napkins now, but a strange man coming to me and asking for my used sanitary napkins was just plain perverted. Seeing that I was just blushing and not saying anything, he quickly asked if I had them or not. If I didn't want to save Tmok quickly, he would just leave. After all, my breasts were so small that he wouldn't bother helping me anyway. What he said made my face turn green and red by turns. But after being tormented by him for so long, and with him finally willing to save Tmok, I had no choice but to swallow my embarrassment and nod yes. Then, I went into the bathroom, wrapped a used sanitary napkin in paper, came out, and handed it to him with a sheepish look. He, on the other hand, had a very normal expression. He took out an iron pot and told me to throw the sanitary napkin in. Then, without asking, he cut off a strand of my hair, lit it with a lighter, and threw it into the iron pot. In the pot, as soon as the sanitary napkin touched the burning strand of hair, it burst into a black flame, emitting a foul smell. My eyes widened. Since I was a child, this was the first time I had ever seen a black flame. How strange! Before I could even ask why the flame was black, Dudu flew in from outside, holding 2 bags of pure fresh milk. Seeing the burning sanitary napkin, it clearly became excited, quickly throwing the fresh milk to its master. Then, it sat down next to the iron pot, looking longingly, just like a small dog waiting for food. The man didn't pay attention to Dudu. He tore open the bag of fresh milk and stood next to the iron basin, as if waiting for an opportunity. Only when the sanitary napkin had almost completely burned did the man pour the fresh milk into the pot. As soon as the fresh milk touched the black flame, it sizzled, like the sound of a red-hot piece of iron being thrown into ice water, and a thick black smoke rose up. Dudu had been waiting for this moment. Its eyes lit up when it saw the black smoke. It lunged into the smoke, inhaling greedily. But the black smoke seemed to have a mind of its own. No matter how much Dudu inhaled, it evaded him and flew straight towards Tmok. What's going on? We're both demons, so why is this black smoke only seeking out Tmok? I looked at the man in confusion. At this moment, his expression was also very confused, and his eyebrows were furrowed into a knot. Seeing his serious expression, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. Could it be that he only had a superficial understanding of things? Before I could even question him, a change occurred on Tmok's side. The black smoke flew completely towards Tmok, enveloping his entire body. I could see Tmok's firm pectoral muscles rising and falling, as if he were taking deep breaths. The black smoke gradually entered Tmok's body after those deep breaths. I stared blankly, only focusing on Tmok's condition. About 10 minutes later, when the black smoke had been almost completely absorbed by Tmok, a miserable groan suddenly echoed in my ears.